About damn time. About damn time. The trade that has been discussed, the trade that has been talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks and months. Aaron Rodgers is officially a New York Jet. So Aaron Rodgers and a 5th-round pick goes to New York in exchange for a 2nd, a 6th this year, and a conditional 2nd-round pick next year that becomes a 1st if Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps this season. Oh, and the team swapped their 1st-round pick this year. So now you've got the Green Bay Packers picking 13 and the New York Jets picking 15. But nonetheless, Aaron Rodgers is a New York Jet. He will wear number 8 and a little bit of, paying respects to Joe Namath. And the Jordan Love era begins when it comes to the Green Bay Packers. About time, Brady Quinn. It's all over.
It's over for now. I mean, I think there could be some more movement for the draft in regards to the NFL and the trades, but this is one that we kept hearing that it was essentially done. The framework was in place. The Green Bay Packers and the Jets, there had to be a little sweetener involved. And so if you look at the bare bones of this deal, it's essentially a 2nd-round pick in this year's draft and a 2nd-round pick that can be changed to a 1st-round pick for the playtime incentive for Rodgers. If he plays 65% of the snaps, that turns into that. So that's more what this is about. And I think the thing that pushed it over the top was the swap of the 1st-round picks. Right now, Green Bay goes from 15 to 13, which that might not seem significant, but in Green Bay's mind, if you look who's at 14, the New England Patriots, they're now getting a jump on them, especially if they feel like that team's got a similar interest with where they want to go at 14. And so they leapfrog someone who might be looking for a receiver. They can go grab one ahead of them or whatever else their intel in Green Bay is telling them about what the Packers are trying to do. So it's not much of a move, but it's significant in that way. And then they swap 7th-round picks too, which, again, not quite as significant, but also adds a little sweetener to it.
And wouldn't you say also at that spot at 13, based on some of the rumblings about the quarterbacks that are going to go early, we've heard some other players, the defensive players that are going to go, you're probably going to get one of the top 3 or 4 O-linemen if you want it. Bakhtiari's been banged up. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, so O-line could be a move for Green Bay now as well, too.
It could be, depending on how you see this class. I don't personally think Paris Johnson Jr. is going to be there. I think he's the best tackle in the class, and he'll probably be a top 10 pick. You look at Skoronski, some people are saying he maybe looks a little bit more like a guard as opposed to a tackle, even though he played tackle during his time at Northwestern, was a hell of a player there. People feel like he could turn into Zach Martin and be an all-pro at guard. So there's varying thoughts on that. You could throw in some other guys. Say that again?
Darnell Wright, Mr. Angry, out of Tennessee.
Yeah, I haven't seen him looked at that high in the draft. Maybe a little bit. After that, there's a bit of a drop off in the tier of some of the top tackles, how they see them, and that next group. And look, a team could be in love with Darnell Wright. They might think he's the next guy. Some people love DeJuan Jones and his size, just because you can't teach that sort of massiveness of a human being. So it all depends on who you're talking to. But offensive linemen could be in play there for them. Again, receivers, some people like Jackson Smith and Jigba, and in a class where maybe he's the only first-round wide receiver that goes at that spot. So who knows what happens? I mean, honestly, knowing Green Bay and depending on who they're looking at, they could even move back if there's a quarterback that's falling, right? We're all making these assumptions of who's going to go where. But what if there's a quarterback that's there and you get a team, that maybe wants to jump back up or take a shot, whether it's Minnesota or someone else who's been talked about or mocked as maybe taking a quarterback with Kirk Cousins on his last deal. So you never know how all this stuff's going to work out, but I'm just glad it's over. It's finally done, and we can now start envisioning what it looks like with Aaron Rodgers as a New York Jet.
It'd be pretty fantastic if the Packers went ahead and drafted a wide receiver with that pick they used in the Rodgers trade. I mean, you talk about the most the irony of all that. seeing Rodgers always saying, "Why can't we take a wide receiver? Why can't we make this a priority?" They're like, "No problem. We hear you. Trade him and go right for the best wide receiver in the draft in Jackson Smith and Jigba." That'd be pretty funny.
It's gotten a little, I don't want to say chippy, but Brian Gutekunst, to kind of some of his parting words in regards to this trade, I took it as okay. Like he wanted to make sure he kind of laid a little message there to Aaron on the way out, at least in the manner in which he talked about what they did last year and just what the team's trying to do this year.
Yeah, and we actually do have Brian Gutekunst, who was talking with the media about the trade. So we're going to hear from Brian Gutekunst. He's connecting via Field Tap right now, Brian Gutekunst. So we're going to hear from him coming up here shortly. But yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers was hoping that this thing, if it was going to end smoothly, because I think he really, really cares about what the fan base thinks of him, and he really cares about what his reputation is. And I don't think it ended smoothly. I don't think, just the vibe you get is that there is some bad blood, and that Brian Gutekunst is a little bit frustrated at not having some conversation. So here was the Packers GM speaking yesterday following the trade of Rodgers to the New York Jets.
I think where our team is at, obviously Aaron's up there in age and has, I don't know however many years he has. I think he's got some really good football left in him. But I think for us, it was just as we got through the offseason and started talking about where we wanted to go, this made a little bit of sense for us. We wanted to get his input, like I've told you guys in the past, and would have loved to have that and kind of see where he sat with that. That didn't happen. That was a little bit unfortunate and disappointing for me. But at the same time, I just think, as we move forward, we're really excited where Jordan can go. He needs to play. And having him sit another year, I think, would have really delayed kind of, where we're going and what we're trying to build.
Is this risky?
There's a risk in the National Football League, but we were 8-9 last year. You know what I mean? So we're trying to get better. You know what I mean? So I think that's important.
We're 8-9 last year. He's making sure everyone knows that Rodgers was there with them last year, but they had a losing record. Right. And just where they're trying to go, and they'll be okay without him. I think this is a really monumental time for the Packers and all parties involved. Brian Gutekunst, Matt LaFleur, and what they're going to be. As much as we're going to make this year about Jordan Love because it's his time now, I also think this has a lot to do with what's going to happen if things don't work out. We're all assuming that it's going to work out the way it worked out with, Brett Favre moving on to Aaron Rodgers. You get one Hall of Famer to another. That just so rarely happens. And again, it's not taking anything away from Jordan Love. It's just the odds are stacked against you. So it's going to be a really interesting year, I think, for the Packers, and even more so to see how aggressive they get in the draft with supplying Jordan Love what they feel like he might need.
They've had 30 years of Hall of Fame quarterback play. That doesn't exist anywhere else. I don't think that's ever happened has that ever happened in the history of the NFL? 30 straight years of Hall of Fame quarterback play?
I don't think so.
Yeah, Brady made up, 25 of that with New England, but still comes up short for 30 years of Hall of Fame quarterback play. If they land on another quarterback, if you're the Bears, just ask the USFL if you can get in. Just say, hey, can we get in here? We're tired of this. They can't figure out the quarterback position. They've been struggling for years in the Packers. And everybody loves Jordan Love, and they love the potential there. But if they end up with another star quarterback in Green Bay, my God, man. But it is interesting to see now Matt LaFleur, no Aaron Rodgers. That will be kind of interesting to watch, because that's always been the thing with Matt LaFleur. It's he took over the Green Bay Packers, and it's easy to do with Aaron Rodgers. I guess now we're going to find out what Matt LaFleur really is as a coach, now that he's got a young quarterback and he's got to not rely on Aaron Rodgers and some of the gifts and talents that Rodgers brought to the table in Green Bay for so long. So that'll be interesting.
I think he really – Rodgers changed up the way teams play you, and especially defensively, how they go about stopping things. You couldn't play as much. One of the things Matt LaFleur has done since he's gotten there is he really has tried to establish the running game. And, you're not going to see as much post-high safety. And when I say that, I'm saying there's usually an extra defender in the box if you're a team that likes to run the football. And they'll do that because they're not concerned about your ability to throw the football quite as much. Because if you've got an extra defender in the box, you have one less defender in pass coverage. And I can promise you during the time Aaron Rodgers was there, they probably received a greater amount of split safety coverages, more coverages to prevent against the pass. Maybe not so much once Adams left and they were trying more to figure out who the next guy is as Christian Watson developed. But it was something that over the course of Rodgers' career, because people are so scared of his arm, it allowed them to have more favorable box counts, run the football more effectively. That's not going to be the case now. People are going to try to task Jordan Love with beating him with his arm. and they're going to try to take away the run and see what the kid's made of. And so that's going to be an adjustment, too, that I think people tend to kind of forget about sometimes when you have a Hall of Famer that moves on.